Because what happens with PTSD, in some sense, is that the narrative through which you see the world fractures. And because it fractures, your perceptions and your consequent emotional responses become chaotic. And that chaos produces stress response, chronic stress response.
Now, oftentimes, we all wish, I think, from time to time, that there's some specific pill that we can take, or there's some machine or device that we can plug our finger into, or that we can, put on a headset and all of a sudden we just rewire our nervous system. Fear is gone, trauma is gone. But it doesn't work that way. And when we think of language and narrative as a tool to rewire our nervous system, in comparison to those kinds of ideas about pills and machines and potions, it starts to seem a little bit weak, right? If we just think, oh, well, how could talking actually change the way that we respond to something? But actually, there are 3 forms of therapy that purely through the use of language have been shown to have very strong positive impact, meaning reduce fears and traumas. And those 3 are prolonged exposure therapy, cognitive processing, or CPT, and cognitive behavioral therapy.
Break your life down into 7 epochs and 7 stages. Sometimes people do that by relationship or by year or by occupation, however you choose. And then to detail out the most significant emotional events of your life, especially those that still hold some emotional valence. And so what you need to do to recover from PTSD is to knit the story back together. I would carefully recommend, especially if what traumatized you happened more than 18 months ago, is that you spend some time either writing about it, or another thing to try is just before you go to sleep, bring the memory to mind, and not enough to push you farther than you want to go, but as vividly as you can, and then let it go.
Contrary to popular belief, it is not going to work to simply extinguish a fear. One needs to extinguish a fear and or trauma and replace that fearful or traumatic memory or idea or response with a positive response. And this is something that's rarely discussed, both in the scientific literature, but certainly in the general discussion around fear and trauma. There's this idea that we can extinguish fears, we can rewire ourselves, we can eliminate our traumas, and indeed we can, but that process has to involve not just becoming comfortable with a particular fearful event or trauma, but also attaching a new positive experience to that previously fearful or traumatic event.